What draws a married man to you most powerfully? It isn't what people typically assume, not appearance alone, not merely physical attraction, and certainly not the wrong words spoken. Jung would have framed it this way: a man becomes captivated by whatever awakens his unconscious mind, whatever reaches directly into his inner void, his shadow self, his anima, his unspoken yearning. A married man might exist within a stable framework, family structure, domestic routines, defined social roles, while simultaneously experiencing internal emptiness, suppression, or emotional starvation. In such cases, he unconsciously seeks out a woman who becomes his compensation. He doesn't always grasp what he's searching for. He simply cannot pull himself away. If you want to understand precisely what keeps him attached to you, you need to look beneath the surface, into the depths. What aspect of his psyche are you bringing to life? The first element that captures a married man most intensely is the sensation of vitality he rediscovers when he's near you. Jung described this as compensation for a one-dimensional existence. A man living in a mode of control, obligation, and routine begins gravitating toward a woman beside whom he experiences genuine emotion again. This doesn't necessarily mean drama. Sometimes it manifests as ease, laughter, spontaneity, a warm gaze, simple human interest. You might not even be doing anything extraordinary, but if you allow him to stop being merely a function and to feel like a man again, he starts holding on because this sensation becomes as essential as oxygen to him. When he returns home to his familiar structure, he makes comparisons. _quote_0_. This is why his thoughts about you can become obsessive. This isn't about you as an object anymore. It's about his internal need to experience feeling. The second element that captures him is your emotional depth and capacity for genuine listening. Married men frequently exist in marriages where communication has become mechanical. What to purchase, who picks up the children, how much to pay for things. Soulful connection vanishes, yet outwardly everything appears normal. Then a woman who truly listens becomes almost a mystical phenomenon to him. Jung would say, Quote 1. When a man encounters a woman beside whom he can speak freely, feel authentically, and be vulnerable, he experiences this as a homecoming to himself. He might express, Quote 2. He'll be drawn not because you're flawless, but because you've given him contact with a part of himself he hasn't inhabited in a long time. If this resonates with you, write alive in the comments. The third element that captures him is your dignity and automatic unavailability. Paradoxically, a married man is often more powerfully drawn to a woman who doesn't dissolve herself or make requests. A woman who maintains boundaries, has her own life, and possesses calm self-worth. Why does this happen? Because such a woman cannot be manipulated through fog. She cannot be retained through measured doses. She doesn't live in expectation. This very quality activates two feelings in the man: respect and fear of loss. From a Jungian perspective, this engages the shadow. His hidden need for control collides with your internal center. If the man is immature, he'll attempt to reclaim power through jealousy, disappearance, or testing. If he's more mature, he'll begin respecting you and be drawn more genuinely. But in both scenarios, dignity captures more powerfully than availability because he already receives availability at home, while dignity is a rarity. The fourth element that captures him is your mirror-like energy. Sometimes, a woman becomes captivating by reflecting back to a man his true condition. You don't flatter or accommodate, but in your presence, he suddenly sees himself. His boredom, his emptiness, his suppression, his cowardice, or conversely, his strength that he hasn't felt in ages. Jung called this an encounter with the shadow, when another person becomes a mirror for what has been repressed. This is precisely why a married man can be strangely attached to you. You activate within him not only what's pleasant, but also what's painful. He's alternately drawn and frightened, writes then vanishes, because you represent not just pleasure for him, but awakening. And awakening is terrifying. When a person wakes up, he must change something, and change is frightening. The fifth element that captures him is the sensation of a second life. A married man often carries within himself the feeling that he lost himself somewhere along the way, that life proceeded as it should rather than as he wanted. Then, a woman becomes a symbol of an alternative path. With you, he plays the role of who he might have been: free, passionate, light, inspired. This isn't always about physical intimacy. It's about the possibility of being alive again. But here lies a significant danger for the woman. If he's clinging to you as his second life, he may not want to dismantle his first. It's convenient for him to maintain two worlds. One provides stability, the other provides emotion. Then you become not a partner, but a secret zone. Jung would say, quote, 3. He wants the feelings but doesn't want to pay the price of choosing. And now here's the most crucial point. What captures him in you doesn't equal what he's prepared to give you. This is the fundamental disconnect. A married man can cling to your depth while giving you fog, can cling to your love while not choosing you, can cling to your dignity while simultaneously trying to break it. Therefore, a woman's task isn't to intensify what captures him, but to observe the pattern, how he handles what captures him. Because there are two distinct scenarios. The mature scenario: he becomes captivated and begins respecting, becomes clearer, takes steps forward. The immature scenario: he becomes captivated and exploits, maintains a thread, portions things out, feels jealous, but assumes no responsibility. How do you determine which scenario is yours? Observe his behavior following boundaries. If you state, quote 4, what does he do? If he becomes more concrete, more stable, more respectful, that's movement. If he begins applying pressure, disappearing, devaluing, shifting everything into emotions, that's a loop. Jung stated, character reveals itself where it's uncomfortable for a person. Love reveals itself where there's a price to pay. If a man doesn't pay the price, then his attraction is compensation, not choice. At the conclusion of the first section, I want you to remember one thought. A married man isn't captured by the ideal woman, but by the woman who landed in his internal deficiency. Vitality, depth, dignity, mirror quality, sense of meaning. These are what hold most powerfully. But if you want to preserve yourself, you need not to celebrate that you capture him, but to understand what you deserve, because you can be the one who captures and still remain in secrecy. In the second section, we'll examine 3 types of married men according to Jung. Who becomes attached through projection, who through dependency, who through power, and what a woman should do in each case to avoid losing her self-worth. Now let's analyze what determines everything. If you understand what precisely in you captures a married man, the next question becomes, what type is he and what is he actually doing with this attraction? Because one man becomes attached and matures, another becomes attached and exploits, a third becomes attached and attempts to control. Jung would say, quote 5. Therefore, we'll divide married men into 3 psychological types. Each type has its own reason for attachment, its own dynamic, and its own ending. Most importantly, each type requires a different response from the woman, otherwise you'll begin losing yourself. The first type is Anima Projection. He becomes attached to your depth and meaning. This man most often appears romantic, sensitive, emotional. He might say that with you, he's authentic, that beside you, he comes alive. He's drawn to your calmness, to your gentle strength, to your ability to hear. He might write beautifully, speak about fate, about connection, about never feeling this way before. In these moments, he's sincere, but the trap lies elsewhere. He doesn't love reality, he loves the image. He's clinging to your energy of meaning because at home, he exists in function mode and becomes empty inside. In Jungian terms, he projects onto you the internal feminine, the anima, and through you attempts to recover emotionality. This type's signature is abundant feelings with minimal structure. He's active in bursts. He can vanish after intense closeness because reality weighs on him. Guilt, fear, consequences. Then he returns because the internal hunger rises again. He struggles terribly with concrete conversations. If you request clarity, he retreats into fog. Not the right time, it's complicated. I need to understand, you're pressuring me. He's not necessarily lying, he's simply incapable of integrating feelings into choice. He wants you as a symbol, but isn't ready to pay for reality. In this scenario, a woman easily becomes a muse who nourishes his soul, but remains in shadow. What should a woman do with this type? The most important thing is not to sustain the fog, not to be an idea, be reality. Calm positioning. Steps and clarity matter to me. If there are no steps, you don't feed the projection with yourself, because projection is maintained through distance and your presence. When you stop being available without structure, this type either matures and becomes more concrete or disappears. Disappearance is also an answer. The second type is dependency through control. He becomes attached to you because you give him the sense that he still possesses power. This man often appears confident, sometimes dominant, but internally he's terrified of losing relevance. In his marriage, he might feel unneeded, secondary, or functioning. Then you appear, a woman who admires, responds, gives attention. He starts clinging because through you he compensates for internal weakness. But the mechanism is different than with the first type. He doesn't see you as depth, he sees you as confirmation. He'll stay in contact so long as you remain within his control zone. The moment you begin requesting something real, establishing boundaries, or showing strength, he shifts into manipulation. This can manifest as gaslighting, jealousy without foundation, or sudden coldness. Jung would call this shadow possession, when a person uses relationships to suppress their fear rather than face it. This type's signature is cycles. He draws close when you distance yourself, distances himself when you draw close. He monitors your emotions, but provides little genuine intimacy. He's unpredictable not because he's confused, but because unpredictability is his tool. What should a woman do here? Don't attempt to earn his respect through patience or softness. This type respects only what he cannot control. You need to be clear and cool. If he vanishes, don't chase. If he manipulates, don't justify yourself. If he tests, don't play. Your task is to cease being the target for his internal emptiness. When you stop reacting, he either begins respecting or departs. Both outcomes are liberating. The third type is escape through passion. This man becomes attached to you as relief from a life he perceives as a cage. He doesn't necessarily project anima onto you, nor does he control. He simply exists in constant tension and seeks release. At home, he feels heavy responsibility, children, mortgage, obligations, expectations. Beside you, he becomes lighter. With you, he can be irresponsible, young, free. This type is often the most intense at the beginning. He pursues you passionately, says he's never experienced such feelings, that with you he's discovered meaning. But here's the paradox. He doesn't want to replace one life with another. He wants both. One life for security, the other for emotion. He's sincerely attached to you, but this attachment is structured around escape, not integration. Jung would say he's splitting himself into persona and shadow, and you've become part of the shadow, what's hidden, forbidden, but essential. This type's signature is intensity without consequences. He can be very present emotionally, but avoids all real conversations. He promises nothing concrete. If you begin asking what happens next, he becomes vague, talks about complications, time, needing to think. He doesn't deceive you intentionally. He genuinely doesn't know, because his psyche isn't oriented toward choice. What should a woman do with this type? Understand that his intensity isn't love, it's discharge. If you want reality, you need to stop being discharge. This means you don't enter cycles. You articulate once. I'm not participating in a format where I'm relief but not choice. Then you observe actions, not words. If he continues the same pattern, you disengage. Not to punish, but because remaining means becoming an accomplice to his splitting. You cannot repair a man who doesn't want to integrate himself. Now something rarely spoken aloud. Why does a woman remain in this dynamic even when she already sees the loop? Because when a married man becomes attached, he's clinging not just to your beauty or gentleness, he's clinging to your psychic energy. And this energy begins binding you as well. Jung would say, quote 7, "Therefore, if you truly want to exit the fog, you need to understand not only his mechanism, but yours as well. Then freedom emerges. You stop being an object of someone else's unconscious and return to your selfhood, to your internal center." The first mechanism that holds a woman is hope as dependency. Not love, but hope. A married man rarely says no. He keeps you in almost leaving, almost decided, almost understood everything. The mind begins living on this almost. Today, he wrote, that means everything is possible. Tomorrow, he disappeared. That means endure. This is variable reinforcement, the most powerful form of psychological dependency. This is precisely why a woman can feel trapped. She doesn't receive stable reality, but receives rare flashes that seem like proof of meaning. In Jungian terms, this is the expectation complex, which captures attention, and while it's captured, you don't hear yourself. The second mechanism is the archetype of being chosen. If he's attached, an internal thought emerges. That means I'm special. This subtly transforms the relationship into competition with reality. A woman unconsciously begins perceiving the man's choice as confirmation of her own value. If he chooses, you're worthy. If he doesn't choose, you're insufficient. This is an extremely painful scenario because it makes your self-esteem dependent on someone else's maturity. Jung would say, quote, 12, "While this part is in control, a woman can tolerate what's destroying her because internally she feels like she's taking an exam." The third mechanism is the rescuer role. Especially if the man says he's struggling, that he's unhappy, that he has children, that everything is complicated. The woman begins feeling she must be wise, patient, understanding. She supports, soothes, becomes his emotional anchor. Then the man clings even more strongly because you've become his regulation. But the cost is your energy. In Jungian terms, this is transference. You become a figure through whom he experiences relief. It's difficult for you to leave because it feels like abandonment. But the truth is, you're not obligated to heal an adult man from his internal conflicts. If he doesn't carry responsibility, your empathy transforms into self-destruction. The fourth mechanism is fear of emptiness. Sometimes a woman holds on to this story because it fills internal silence. Even pain is better than emptiness. Even waiting is better than solitude. Here Jung is especially precise. Emptiness frightens because it opens the door to shadow, to where old feelings are hidden. Fear of being alone, the feeling of being unwanted, childhood pain. Quote 13, the habit of earning love. While a woman avoids this encounter, she'll choose relationships with much tension and little clarity. Because tension creates the illusion of life, while clarity requires internal support. Now, how to exit without bitterness and without games? Dignity isn't coldness, revenge, or demonstrative ignoring. Dignity is order. It's a calm decision. I don't participate in a format where I'm not chosen and where I must wait. This order is maintained through 3 actions. The first action is to stop giving warmth on credit. This means you don't give emotional closeness, intimacy, support, and constant access if there's no reality. Not to punish, but to stop being a source for his complex. The complex feeds on access. When access ends, the system is forced to change. The second action is one clear formula and one limit. I need clarity and respect. I cannot be a secret. If you're ready for steps, show it. If not, we end this format. Then comes the hardest part. You don't negotiate, don't explain 10 times, don't prove. Don't argue, because argument is also connection. You don't need connection at any cost. You need reality. The third action is to reclaim your life and rhythm. Plan your life as if he's not a factor. This breaks dependency. If he appears, you don't drop everything, don't run, don't seize the chance. You observe whether he brought reality. If he didn't, you don't return to fog, because each time you return, you reinforce the loop. Jung would say, the unconscious learns through repetition. If the repetition is different, the scenario changes too. One more key. Don't fight feelings. Hold decision with them. You can miss him, love him, remember, and still choose yourself. Maturity, according to Jung, is holding opposites. I'm in pain and I cannot live this way. When you hold this, you stop being a toy of complexes. You become a person who lives from center. The final thought is simple and harsh. What captures a married man in you is your energy and what you awaken in his unconscious. But this doesn't mean he's capable of giving you love in reality. Until he integrates his shadow and transforms pull into responsibility, he'll hold you as a source. Your task isn't to be a source. Your task is to be yourself. When you choose yourself, everything that was sustained by your waiting disappears. Only what can live in light remains. And this precisely is the criterion of genuine love. If you choose yourself, write light in the comments. Yeah,